There we go. Let's continue now with the upper arm, my friends. And before we do that, I just want to show you a little trick here. So I was noticing that the division from my upper elements to the lower ones is a little bit too intense on my particular side. So other than, of course, going with trim dynamic and cleaning up these things, here's now you can actually use a smooth. So don't be afraid to, once you do a little bit of cleanup, to use a smooth to get some very nice surfaces. But if you feel there's too much gap on an element, don't smooth it. Try to fill it in first with a little bit of clay buildup, as you can see right here. And that won't remove as much of the element or as much of the effect. You'll still keep or conserve a lot of the detail while still separating things in a nice way. Okay, so yeah, there we go. Now let's go on to the arm. The arm is one of my favorite muscles. So the shoulder first, the deltoid, is made out of 3 main heads, and you can see them right here. So this is the first head, this is the second head, and this is the third head. The first head starts like right around here, and we're gonna see the muscle going, of course, towards the direction of the arm, which is gonna be on this like center part of the arm. So you're gonna see a little bit of a bulge right around here. The second one's gonna be right down the middle. It's gonna be a very big muscle as well, and it usually sits on top of the first one that we just talked about, and it's gonna go right around there. Again, notice how I'm not really adding more volume to the character. I'm just like defining the forms that we already had. And finally, the last one, the last head, is a very like elongated head because it receives a lot of kind of like stress and curvature, and it goes to the center like this. Again, all of them go to a single point in the center of the arm. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use trim dynamic to start sharpening up this guys a little bit. So usually, as you can see, the deltoid is very round, but in our character, since we're going for this sort of like stylized bive, I'm going to try to make this a little bit more like a sharper effect, a little bit sharper. So you can see that I'm creating one plane right there and then another plane change like right around there, while still conserving these 3 main areas. And you can see right there, see that little hole or dip that we see? That's where we got the acromion process, which is this thing right here. And it's exactly what I was mentioning right now, or in the previous video, about the chest muscles. When you have very big muscles, they're gonna bury the bones that they're like growing around. So we're gonna start seeing this as a more of a dip rather than seeing it as the actual leg bone. So I can push this right there and create the dip and the division for the 3 heads of the deltoid. Let's smooth all of that out. And there we go. Look at how sharp that looks. That looks very sharp though, so I am gonna round it off a little bit more. And again, we can simplify and soften the division of the elements of the muscles themselves. Later on, wrinkles and all that stuff is gonna help very, very nicely to get an even better shape. But as you can see, we get this very, very cool effect. Let's take a look at our concept real quick, because you can see again that the deltoids on the concept are really sharp. And here's where the drawing that my friend did is I think very helpful, because you can see that again the shape of the deltoid is really interesting, because it doesn't like really push out like what I have right here, kind of like blends in. So I'm gonna use my move brush, and while preserving everything, I'm just gonna like change things here a little bit. So as you can see, I'm just like modifying the position of some of these things, and I'm making this sort of like elongated deltoid muscle. Now, very important, see that like horrible silhouette that we have right there? Trim dynamic. That's the job of the trim dynamic, to get a very, very clean deltoid muscle right there. Now, if you want to exaggerate things a little bit, that's fine. This is where always like art direction is very important. When you're working in a studio, you're always going to have a lead or a client that's going to be telling you, yeah, this looks good, or this does not look good. So in this particular case, I do think that we can push this just a tad bit more out. And still keep this sort of like sharp effect that we have right here. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna just push the silhouette a little bit, so that when we have the final like pose, because that's another one. Later on, we're gonna be posing this character, and when we bring the arms down, these things will change the silhouette quite a bit. Let me show you real quick. So I'm gonna clone this thing right here. Let's go over here. We're gonna go to the lowest of division, and I'm gonna go to mask lasso, and let's mask this like section right here. This is what we would normally do for like rigging and stuff like that. And if we move the pivot point, let's say to where the shoulder is, right around there, and we rotate this down, right? Like this is with the arms down, and maybe even like rotate the arm in a little bit, like that. You can see that we're gonna have a really, really strong silhouette, right? Like even though it looks like it's kind of flat when we like bring the arm up, it looks very round when the arms are down. So this is gonna give us the sort of like stylized effect that we want. That actually tells me that it's fine if we like flatten this thing a little bit more to clean the element. Now, I personally really like, and I think the concept has that on the definition of the muscle. Yeah, has a little bit. Right here, you can see a little bit of a gradient on this area. So I personally like to kind of like polish the border of the deltoid right there. Again, this is going to give us a sort of like stylized effect going around the whole thing right here. Look at that. So it's very subtle, right? Like we're not changing too much, but it's kind of like this line that we have. 1, 2, 3. George Bridgman does this all the time on his drawings. He goes for this like very sharp lines as well. Now, we've mentioned this before when we were talking about the construction of the armpit, but here on the armpit, we're going to have a division. It's important to mark that division, or at least make it a little bit more obvious. So I am going to go softly around the arm right here and make it very obvious on how this, like, three things, the deltoid, the, the deltoid, the bicep, and the pectoral muscle are kind of like blending together. And we're going to get that very nice triangle. That triangle, by the way, it's a very special secret because that's a point where we have a very specific topology thing in the retopology process. So bicep, this bicep right here is just ridiculous. You can see it's super big compared to what we had before. So, well, let's do it. If that's what the concept says, we gotta do it. So I'm gonna grab my trim dynamic here. I'm gonna start cleaning up this first things. And you can see that when we see it from the side, especially on this other view right here, it's quite big. So this guy is definitely doing or taking some like undead elixirs or something. So I'm gonna like push this volume here with my clay buildup again to generate this very nice round effect for the bicep. I usually, of course, don't like exaggerating things like this too much because it also becomes a little bit problematic for rigging because with that much volume, you're gonna get overlap, right? But hey, that's the concept, so we gotta follow it. Now here, I'm gonna use trim dynamic, and I do wanna create a little bit of a sharp edge right around here, right where the bicep starts meeting the other part of the arm. And we're gonna get this right here. Now, if you remember, I talked about a brachialis muscle that we sometimes get right there, so I'm just gonna add the volume very softly right there to indicate the division of the arms. And you can see this on some references here on the characters. Look at that. That line that you see right there, that's part of the tricep, but then this little volume that we hear, that's the brachialis. So I would expect to see a little bit of that volume. It kind of like merges with the other muscles, which are the ones from the lower arm. But we would expect to see a little bit of something there, especially like merging with the rest of the elements. If we want to flatten that one, again, just trim dynamic to keep it really flat. And on this side right here, this is where we're gonna see the tricep. This tricep is going to be really big. So I'm going to do this right here. Demian standard. Again, kind of like carving in the main direction. Remember that the tricep has a couple of heads. And this is very important. This is where we're going to see this tendon right here. It's a really strong tendon. I like to do this sort of like arrow thing because the tendon is not as volume, doesn't have as much volume as everything else. So I'm going to start carving there out of the tendon. And again, it's very similar to bones. The muscles are going to wrap around or create the volume around the tendon. And then the tendon itself, as you can see, creates this like a rigidity surface. So I'm going to do it like this. And that's going to be building up our like tricep muscle. We definitely have to see the tricep from this part right here, from the front part. Again, trim dynamic to flatten things. I would expect to see a little bit of the brachialis here as well. So I'm just going to like very softly add it right there. Remember, it's kind of like the hamburger bun. Smooth it out. And then over here, the bicep, remember that the bicep is going to go and insert itself in the inside of the forearm. So I would expect there to be the insertion point going forward like this. So let's start carving and cleaning some of the shapes right there. Another great, I think this was a great, to be honest, it's one of my favorite renditions of Ryu from Street Fighter, and you can see it. Let me go right here, like Ryu, Street Fighter 5, even Street Fighter 6 that just recently released has a really cool stuff. But look at that arm. I love this design for Ryu, to be honest. And you can see, like on this picture right here, that's the brachialis. Bicep, tricep, brachialis. So there are some movements where Ryu like pushes his arm down, and you can see how the model was constructed. which again, it's a really good way to study things. We're gonna take a look at some of the forearm muscles in just a second. I'm trying to see if there we go, look at that. So on this model right here, you can see how when he brings the arms down, we can still see the line that divides and where we would expect the bicep to be inserting to. So that line right there is this muscle right here, like going over everything else. But again, that tells me that we need to like help this whole thing and push this element down a little bit. Let's smooth it out, and again we can like inflate this a little bit more. There we go. Now sometimes you really don't see it right here, but the bicep on the outer side of the edge or in the outer part of the arm is usually a little bit shorter. Let me show it. Let me see if I have a reference right here. No, not really. But the two heads of the bicep, they're actually not the same length. There we go. So you can see here on the outer edge, like look at how that sort of like triangle looks right there. And that's very, very important. Oh, this one's even better. Look at that. So that head right there, the one that's on the outer edge, it's usually a little bit smaller than the one that's in the inner edge. So what that tells me is that we can actually remove a little bit of volume here, just a little bit, because the head would still be like right around there. But that's going to give us a more realistic thing while not sacrificing the like sort of stylized approach that we have with the character. Again, later on the detailing pass, we're going to be adding like the veins and the wrinkles and all that sort of stuff. But this is looking quite nice. So that will be the bicep. I'm going to give myself a little bit more volume here on the inside. And yeah, you can see that little line right there. Again, brachialis. That's the brachialis. Let's see if we have a tricep over here. Again, brachialis right there. The important thing, again, remember, is that the tricep is usually, especially when seen from the side, the tricep is a little bit higher than the bicep. So I'm going to use Stream Dynamic to flatten the tendon a little bit more. Because when we see this, I really want to see the volume of the tricep here on the back. And I'm going to use Move Brush, just the Move Brush, to push this back a little bit more. Again, so that when we see this side view right here, there's a lot of volume up here on the tricep. On this back part right here is usually like a very straight line that we see here on the tricep. Let's see if we have a reference over here. We should have one. That one's raised. You can kind of see it. Look at that. So the inner face, this one right here, that's the big one. That's the really, really big face. And this one's the long face. And that's the tendon right there, going, of course, to the elbow. So the elbow is very interesting. You can actually touch the elbow, and we've did this before. We can go all the way to the little pinky finger. And this thing that we see right here, that's the hook of the ulna that we have on our arm, like going into the humerus. So the way I like to do this is creating kind of like a triangle shape right here. And there's going to be two like little protrusions that you're going to see, one on this side and one on this other side. And those are important because they're in their insertion points. So a lot of the muscles that we're going to be doing on the lower arm are going to be inserted right there. But look at that. Look at the silhouette right here. We got like a bumpy, like a round silhouette, and then very straight. Because on that area right there, we want things to be very, very, very straight. So I'm just going to like fill this in right here. There we go. And one of the things that we could do if we want to add a little bit more detail is just like create like the distinction. That's a difficult word. Distinction of both of the heads. So we can create a little volume right there. If it's too much, remember, we just use clay buildup and we start filling things in. Now on this insertion right here, I am going to be a little bit more precise. So I feel like this is going a little bit too low. Let's push this up, because when we see the back of the character, let's see, where's the back reference? There we go. You can see that we're going to have the volumes right here, but look at that. Look at that shadow area right there. That's the shadow area that's coming from the deltoid. So in this case, I think my deltoid is missing a little bit of like edge on this back part right here, because I wanna have the same sort of shadow going from the side of the deltoid to the front, and then around here where the little tricep inserts itself. Reference, my friends. Reference is king especially for anatomy artists. I've been doing this for over 12 years, and I still need my reference, because even though I know all of the muscles and all of the positions, you still need to see it to understand, like, if you're missing something. Here, I think I'm gonna lower the deltoid just a tad bit more to make sure that we have a nice balance. And let's clean stuff up, because right now this looks very, very sketchy. right? We can still see like the movements and the elements from the brush. So I definitely want to like clean things up a little bit. I'm gonna try to be a little bit more aggressive here on the tendon. And let's start cleaning up with smooth. Right now it's just smooth to get rid of that and get a very like nice fluffy effect. Later on, again, wrinkles and the skin folds and everything else is gonna be added on the detail pass to get a really nice effect. I'm not particularly in love with this elbow right there, so I'm gonna use Trim Dynamic to flatten this and then flatten this one right here. I want to have a very sharp elbow. Very, very sharp elbow. And actually here Ryu might be a very good reference. I'm not seeing a back view though, unfortunately. Oh, this one right here. So you can see that's Ken. So we can use that little like reference. Actually, let me copy this image. There we go. So you can see how we get this like very, very nice like bumpy effect right here on the shoulders. So I'm gonna use clay buildup, and I'm gonna add a little bit more of the bumpy effect right here. There we go. So when we see this from the side view, and again, we can use Trim Dynamic to sharpen that effect, but I really want to have that like silhouette change of the arm like pushing out. I might even exaggerate a little bit more. There we go. Now that of course means that we're gonna have to modify a little bit here on the lower arm, but yeah, that's it. Again, quick comparison and quite a big difference, right? So this is why I always tell my students, you cannot just judge yourself or judge anyone else's art based on a work in progress, because as things move forward and as the production continues, things just look so much different. So anytime I see a post online or forums or anywhere about a work in progress, I always see potential there, right? But the thing is, the secret about being a good artist is not just showing potential, but actually delivering and demonstrating that you can convert that potential into an actual successful project. So yeah, that's I think that's pretty much it for this one, guys. We went a little bit over our usual time. But we're moving forward quite nicely. I think so far we're only doing this, or we've been doing this for like 10 hours. So getting to this point in 10 hours, believe me, not that easy. Again, if you're taking a little bit longer, don't worry. Take your time, go over all of this, get as much reference as you can, and just continue to polish. So I'm gonna stop the video right here, guys. And in the next one, we're gonna be taking a look at the lower arms or the forearms. We're gonna be polishing some of the muscles that we see right here on the forearms. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you back on the next one.